The countdown is well and truly on for the USL Players Association. Less than 24 hours to go until the first ever agreement expires. To get us the latest updates, Executive Director for the Players Association USL, Connor Tobin, welcome aboard and thank you for joining us here on New Year's Eve.
Hey, happy New Year's, guys.
Interesting day, I imagine, for you, Connor. We do appreciate you jumping on, as Rob said. I mean, we decided to reach out sort of last minute, but there is a reason for this. Not just that the deadline is approaching, but that the USLPA put out an open letter, and so give us your thoughts right now, where things stand. I mean, whatever you can tell us about what's going on and why the open letter was important for the USLPA.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long process. So we started trying to bargain this successor agreement in August of 2024. Obviously, there's been a lot of twists and turns. The league's made some big announcements early in 2025 that certainly has affected the pace of negotiations. There's been a lack of clarity that's been provided to us that certainly slowed this process down. And then as we go into the fall, I think from our perspective, we really haven't taken, or what they put on the table is really not a full step from where we were in this very first CBA. This first CBA was about creating any sort of standard in the USL ecosystem when there was none. I think players understood that there needed to be a pace of change, and what we accepted was pretty marginal, but was done so with an eye towards the pace of change and making that sustainable. And we're coming back to the table at the end of that agreement and looking to kind of complete a step towards like actual professional standards. And what's been on the table has not been that. And then I think that was exclamation point put on that yesterday, where the ball is in their court. Coming out of our session on December 22nd, we came into our session yesterday and there was no new proposal from them on any topic. So at some point, as players, the general public deserves to know what's going on, and that's kind of the genesis of the letter.
Is there one specific hang-up, like one ask from the players that's slowing it all down, or is it across the board of all the major touch points that there's just limited progress on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think core in any collective bargaining agreement is going to be economics. That's certainly what the parties have spent a bunch of time on. But I think, from the jump, as a players association, yes, it's the core economics of getting to a livable wage for all players. It's been about getting healthcare access. The fact that we have over a quarter of our league in 2025 that wasn't even offered the ability to get on a health insurance plan, it's not acceptable. It's not professional. And so if we're going to talk about these big, ambitious things, we've got to cover the basics first. That doesn't even get into some of like the workplace conditions type stuff. What is players' ability to speak into hotels that we stay in on the road? What are the quality of those hotels? Meals before and after training? Any of these sorts of things that there is, again, within the USL business structure, a lot of latitude for every club to kind of do whatever they deem is right. We have some great clubs. I want to be very, very clear about that. But we also have some clubs that on these various topics, it could be drastically different. Mm-hmm. So how do we create a standard here? And then what is the league's role in any of this?
Right. That part of it, Connor, I think is a little bit mystifying, I imagine, for fans, right? If they're focused on their individual club, maybe they have a sense of how ambitious their club is or how well their club takes care of players. And, we're not privy to contract details, and I don't know that fans should be privy to all the contract details for players, but I think that there probably is a lack of clarity around the idea of, okay, what exactly is USL relative to the clubs and how they operate? Because when you say, oh, MLS has a CBA, well, everybody knows MLS is a single entity, and everything that comes out of the headquarters that's the letter of the law. You have to do it that way because you are bought into the organization. And I know that's, it gets into like ownership and paperwork and things like that. So, is there any way to kind of boil this down so fans understand? Can the USL dictate? Can they legally do that? I mean, is that really what you're trying to get them to? Like, hey, if you want to organize this league and you want to be ambitious and you want to grow and do all these things you say you want to do, you better be a little bit more heavy-handed with your clubs in creating those professional standards.
Somewhat. I think it's maybe even more foundational. In terms of how the business functions and how decisions gets made, what's the alignment of the various parties? Who has control points? Who actually can make the decision? So when we talk about a new Division I league, is that a USL decision or is that the team's decisions? And who has the ability to make that? How unilateral is that? How aligned are we all in terms of where this business is going?
Interesting. Something that I've been asked, and that I think, and don't have a lot of clarity on, how is it that we see clubs announcing player signings and whatnot? How does that work for a player to sign a contract when the bargaining agreement is set to expire in a day or two?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think when a CBA expires, there's a range of possibilities. Now, technically speaking, you walk into a period where, let's say, the no strike, no lockout. So either party could potentially instigate a work stoppage. But if that's not the case, then really what happens is a continuation of the current agreement. The parties continue to bargain in good faith until the status quo changes. So I think we've been pretty clear from a players association standpoint for the time being. Our intent is to continue to bargain in good faith. All we're asking is for the league to actually show up in a way to bargaining that aligns with what they say publicly about their ambitions with what is actually being put across the table.
Can you give us any insight? So again, this idea of like who's aligned, is what USL says unilateral, or the clubs making individual decisions? I know this is nuts and bolts, but how does that work from a negotiation perspective? Like, who's representing the league? Is every club represented in this? I mean, obviously that seems unwieldy. Somebody's got to be identified as the negotiator. Again, maybe you're unclear on how much authority that person ultimately has in passing this negotiation, whatever is presented down to the clubs.
Yeah, I think it's an important distinction here. The league has the authority to act as the collective bargaining representative on behalf of its clubs. Now, any sort of CBA that would be like a tentative agreement would be reached would go back to the Board of Governors, which is representative of all the groups. Okay. But the league, it means the league kind of has the authority to lead bargaining. Now, what the league does in this is they select a bargaining committee. So it might have some club representation. Again, it's the league leading that. But if you think about a negotiation, hey, we're saying that there's kind of three distinct parties here. Well, you have one party that is negotiating the deal on behalf of the other party, but has a vested interest. So you think about like, how does the conversation unfold? Okay, how do you get to what is the real intention of any sort of proposal? Is this a club ask? Is this a league ask?
Right.
Who's driving what? So you have conflicting desires and a lack of alignment.
So bringing us up to the here and now, we're talking to you just a little bit after 10 a.m. on the final day of 2025. So where does it stand now? Are you guys like waiting for a call? Is there going to be another meeting today? Like, what's the next step?
There's not going to be another meeting today. Where this deal will expire, and we are not going to have a tentative agreement. We're still got a ton of distance on a number of issues. But as we get into January, we look to schedule more sessions and hopefully close the distance. But I think from a player perspective, it's pretty straightforward. We want to get to a CBA. This is an important year. I think we have shown throughout the history of our organization and as players historically, we will come to the middle. We are here to be partners in this whole thing. We are willing to compromise. We did so in the first CBA, but we're not here to take a bad deal. We need to have a willing dance partners with the league and clubs to actually meet in the middle here, and we start to address the professional standards for the here and now.
Okay, so let's get remedial here. And I know we talked about this before, Connor, when you were on the show, and I know you've talked about this in other forums. You've been out there. Yeah. When you say professional standards, and I know there's some numbers in your open letter, especially about I think one of the things that people really focus on is the healthcare, which you brought up here specifically. when you say professional standards, that's not like there's some document handed down by the football gods that says here's professional standards for a soccer team in America or otherwise. So when you talk about defining what that is, how do you explain that to people who maybe ask, what are professional standards?
Yeah, I think for most people here in this country, if they go see a professional sports match or game, they're expecting that those players are full-time, that this is what they do, and they make a livable wage. So when we get into kind of the core within that letter of what was released, the fact that we have 85% of the league that's still not on 12-month contracts. But hey, through an off season, we're expected to keep ourselves fit. We're expected to train because, hey, that first week of preseason, we're playing an MLS team or we're playing preseason games. And that's the expectation from the club. Well, then the expectation the other way should be, hey, that training time, all that sort of stuff, this is a full-time, all-in thing. It's not good enough to say, here's a 10-month contract. You got to plan to get through your off season. You got to figure out housing for those 2 months. Like that is a huge pain point here. And it detracts from the product.
And so is the expectation that everyone's just saving up for those 2 months?
It's just been put on players historically. If we go back prior to the first CBA, 75% of contracts were variable length. They literally, USL, who had the ability to unilaterally design the contracts, had checkbox in it. So, hey, when do you start to get paid? There's a checkbox, when you report. And then you would go through the checkbox to the end of the season. Last game played. So whether that's the last game of the regular season or, hey, first round of playoffs at last. And that was 75% of contracts. So you, from a player perspective, you don't know how much money you're going to make. How professional is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you go down the line, go to healthcare. How can we have over 25% of players where their clubs don't even offer the ability to get onto a health plan currently? Meanwhile, hey, all of the front offices have health plans. Tell me how that works. How professional is that? And then that's getting into like a third issue of the actual pay. How do we have 25% of this league currently that we want to go and say, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. We're going to launch all these next things that make under $35,000 annually from a salary perspective. Mm-hmm. Again, I hear the question, Jason, about like, what is professional? You guys tell me, does that sound professional?
No, I think you got to something there that really struck me. And maybe this is an easy way to explain it to somebody. Why would the players who are your product? I mean, that is, if you don't have players, you don't have games, you can't play, you can't compete. You're not in the business of soccer, right? You're just a marketing company. You're just selling t-shirts, right? If you're treating your players differently than you're treating your employees who are in the front office who are doing the marketing, if those people have 12 months of employment, if those people have healthcare, if those people have a livable wage, why do the players not have a livable wage? And I'm not getting into who's more important. Obviously, everybody's supposed to be important. That should be the point.
Well, I think there's a piece where you can look at it at a club level, but I'd also look at it at a league level. How big is the league office? How many people over there, have full-time jobs? How many people are getting their benefits? And again, where is the product? And all of these things need to work in balance. We will say that over and over again from our perspective. It's not that players are more important, but it should be equitable.
Yeah.
We should meet in the middle.
Go ahead, Rob. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I saw Pittsburgh goalkeeper Eric Dick quote tweet one of the Platitudes USL championship on their websites, saying they're one of the most successful leagues in the world. And then he quote tweeted like, if you're one of the most successful leagues in the world, then why are these issues that you're dotting? Why are they an issue if you're the most successful thing in the world? Is that a tangible sense in the player pool that corporate says one thing and then negotiation rooms is a whole nother story?
100%. I get this from players. I've gotten this from players for years. Well, they say this. I come into this league and, well, what about this, this, and this? And they're like, these are questions like, hey, you should get Paul McDonough on this show and ask him this.
Okay. Connor, again, thank you for your time this morning. Obviously, an emotional day, I think, for a lot of people in American soccer, especially for you and for your players. I guess one of the bottom line things here is you talked about what happens tonight, right? The CBA expires if there is good faith negotiations, then it's status quo unless somebody takes dramatic action, lockout or strike. Is there a next deadline? Is there a bottom line deadline? Is there a drop dead date for any of this before it starts to become, oh, the season really is impacted?
Yeah, I can't really answer that right now.
Okay, that's
Don't really have
fair.
line of sight on that.
Feel like I have to ask, but I understand where you're coming from on that. So, okay.
Yeah, what the rubber hits the road moment is TBD, so to speak, I guess, eh?
Correct.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on last minute here on the final day of 2025. I wish you all the best, and kudos to you. I know I've seen you do various appearances like this here. They're hitting the pavement for your players, so I appreciate you doing that again here this morning with Morning Kickaround.
Appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Connor.